I'm excited to talk to you. When I saw that you were a financial coach, I thought, wow, that's super interesting because it's kind of a weird time when things are, historical inflation, things are more expensive more than ever. And so I thought
Mhm.
it'd be a kind of a relevant topic of conversation. You've got a really interesting story where I saw that you've paid off debt, been debt free twice, paid off six figures in
Mhm.
debt, and now you travel the country with your RV full time.
Yeah, it is a very crazy story and definitely not one that we planned.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Whose idea was it to do the RV thing? Was that you or your husband or a bit of both?
You know, so can I share like how it came to be? Because it
Please,
was
yeah.
really, so what happened was in 2021, we had our house on the market in Colorado, and we had been working for many years to move out of Colorado, move to Arizona. Really wanted to live in Arizona. Put the house on the market in Colorado, and I am not kidding, Ryan. Like 3 weeks before we're ready to, close on the sale of our home, we're trying to like scramble, get a mortgage in Arizona, buy a house sight unseen, like all of these things.
Oh,
And we were
wow.
debt free at that point, but we couldn't qualify for a mortgage. And I was like, that hit me kind of in the pride, kind of in the ego area, because I was like, I'm in the finance arena and we cannot qualify for a mortgage. Now, there's a lot of bits and pieces to that. My business hadn't been registered, so they couldn't show income from my business. My husband was transferring, employment. I get it, but it still hurt.
Yeah.
So I thought, okay, let's rent. So now we're like 2.5 weeks away from not having a place to live. And I was like, we'll just rent an apartment, we'll rent a condo, we'll rent a house. Um, Nobody would rent to us because we couldn't show
Same thing.
weekly income. Same thing. I even offered to pay 6 months or a year in advance. They didn't have to change their policies for us, right? The housing market at that time, rental market, super strong.
Oh,
They
wow.
didn't they didn't have to change, their policies for us. So about 2 weeks before we were ready to close, we load up and bring our daughter down to ASU. She went to college at ASU. So we're, you know, getting her all moved in. And we're like, what is plan C? We're now on plan C. What are we gonna do? Long story short, my husband's aunt had an old fifth wheel camper that she was selling, and neither one, my husband or I, had any experience with campers or pulling them or living in them, staying in them even overnight. Zero experience. We're like, okay, let's find a place to park this. We found an RV resort to park the camper, and we got all moved in and got down to Arizona. And after a couple of months of living there and talking to so many people, we looked at each other and said, what's stopping us from traveling full time? Like, what is stopping us from picking up and just leaving and just traveling? And we looked at each other, and nothing, nothing was stopping us. And that's when the plan was, that's how it came to be. We sold the other old fifth wheel and we bought the one that we have now. And I would say 3 years, the rest is
Wow.
history.
So this was more out of necessity than something you guys really planned to do then.
It originally, yeah. Yeah, it was like plan C, plan D, whatever it was in the in the,
It's crazy
check
because
mark.
when you compare yourself to like the standard American, I'm just going to go out on a limb and say you probably had a lot more in the bank. You had more income than most people that could qualify, but it's not W-2. It's not exactly the way they want it, which is so crazy. I heard Dave Ramsey talk about this. He said, on paper, I don't qualify to rent from a building I could pay for in cash,
Right.
which is so stupid that that's a thing,
Yeah.
but it is. I've been through that ourselves. We've looked at buying and renting recently the last couple years actually, and decided it wasn't a good idea. Not enough qualification, even though we're doing fine, but on paper it's not W-2. It's not what they want. It's just such a weird thing.
It is, and through that experience, I've been able to help now my clients in a very different way because I've experienced things very differently than I had in the past, right? And so I believe that I don't necessarily believe that things happen for a reason, but I believe that we can learn and gain insight, and growth comes from a lot of our experiences. And that was one of the most difficult 6 weeks of my entire life. But born from that has been a greater understanding of different aspects of finances, um, a greater understanding of our own resilience, right? And how
Mm.
we make decisions and how we handle challenges. And we said our marriage is either gonna grow or it's gonna fall apart. Which are we, living in 400 square feet and being with each other 24 hours a day, 7 days a week is not for the faint of heart.
No, no. Oh my gosh. Yeah, you talk a lot about marriage in relation to finance, and they are very closely linked. I want to talk about that with you.
Mhm.
We'll go back to the RV thing for a minute. I mean, how has that been? Have you guys enjoyed it? Have you made it work, or how's it been for you?
It's been one of the greatest experiences and also one of the most challenging. Um, I was never a traveler beforehand. I tell you, it was almost like pulling teeth, even taking family vacations. I liked my home. It felt safe. It
Yeah,
felt, it just, I wouldn't consider myself an introvert or an extrovert, either one, but home just felt safe to me. So I was never a traveler. And I will tell you, this has been I love it. I cannot imagine myself living in a home, being
really.
stationary.
You can't go
This has
back now.
been no, no. People ask us all the time, when are you stopping? And I thought, who the heck needs to stop? Like, there's so much to see and so much to do. Um, I'm a completely different person now than I was 3 years ago. I think I'm a better wife. I'm a better mom. I communicate a lot more effectively. I am so much more compassionate towards people because now I have been into more cultures, right? I've been able to
Mm,
see how people live. I grew up in the same town of 1,800 people for 41 years. I didn't really leave that town. And so I arguably lived a sheltered life, right? And so
yeah.
this has opened up so much more for me.
Do you
It's
still
been great.
find yourself like kind of longing for that home feel, or is this now your home? Is the road and all these different places, has that become your feeling of home?
It has, and, I think it's great because this is our home, like, these are our contents. It's different when, um, we're packing a bag to jump on an airplane to go someplace, that I'm ready to get back. I'm like, "What do I take with me?" We literally carry everything with us all the time, and so our home literally goes with us wherever we are. I don't feel like I need a home base. I
Mm,
don't feel like I and like longing to get back to some place. I feel excited to get to some of our favorite places, but this is home. Home is on the road. Home is, you open up your door and you think, okay, it takes you a second to remember exactly where you're at, right?
yeah, yeah. How long do you stay in any one place, or is it kind of just different throughout the year?
We like to stay. Well, truthfully, we'd like to move about every 3 weeks. We generally stay about a month because financially speaking, it's much more affordable that way. RV parks and resorts, you get a better deal if you book for a month versus paying daily or weekly. And so a
Mm,
lot of times it's almost like a buy 2 weeks, get two free kind of a deal, right? Like you're
yeah.
staying for a full month and that costs you the same as it would to stay 2 weeks. And so financially to make this so we can continue to do this as long as possible. We stay about a month.
Wow. You just kind of move wherever the weather's nicest. You stay south for the winter, maybe go up north during the summertime.
Yeah. Yeah, I don't ever care to see snow in person again or cold temperatures, so
You've had enough of
any
that, huh?
place that's warm. Yeah. Yep.
Yeah, I saw you're in Arizona, so you just kind of hang out around the south mostly.
We have this past year. So one thing that's been interesting is being a business owner. uh, there's some challenges that we all face. And one of the challenges that my husband and I have faced over the past couple years is health insurance, trying
Mm,
to find affordable health insurance. And so we haven't had it for 3 years. And so we've actually been stationary since March. He was offered a full-time position. And with that full-time position came health insurance. And so we've used the past several months being stationary here in Arizona to look at how we want life to be different going forward and change some of our processes. And since then, ironically, I've met a couple of people that are health insurance brokers that now opened up, a lot of options that I didn't know existed beforehand. And so we've been stationary, yeah, since March. Um, and crossing our fingers, we're going to be back on the road by the first part of December. So another month
Oh,
here.
cool. Cool. He can work remotely, it sounds like then.
He put in his notice. He's leaving. So
Oh,
we have four businesses between the two of us, and we want to focus on those businesses more than working W-2. So he put
I
in his
love that.
notice.
I want to get into this because everyone in the entrepreneurial space says, pick one thing, have one, put all your focus into one thing. I just don't jive with that at all. I think you have to do a
Mhm,
lot of different things to find out what you like and what works for you. And most people aren't like one or two dimensional. They like to do multiple things.
mhm,
So I'd love to hear, what are your businesses? I know you have the coaching business.
mhm. So yeah, financial coach is my, like, that's my baby business. Like, that's my pride, my main focus. I've had a business with a a health and wellness company, US manufacturer, for 17, almost 18 years
Hmm.
now, where I get money, make money every single month with them. And actually I'll show you.
Are you like an affiliate, like you sell supplements or something like that?
Yeah, I actually don't sell anything, and just talking to people and educating them on toxins in their home, especially now with the
Oh,
economy the way it is. Their products, because they're USA manufactured, much more affordable than what you're going to get at Walmart's, Targets, all of those stores. And
yeah.
so, yeah, it's just helping people switch stores, save some money, save their health, and earn an extra income if that's what they choose to do.
Wow. That's pretty cool.
Mhm. Yeah, so, almost 18 years. February will be 18 years with them. So
We'll have to chat offline about that because I'm curious about that. Is it like all natural stuff or anything?
lots, yeah. So they don't use any toxic ingredients. So, and it's all consumable. They've got over 400 daily consumable products that we're all using already. They even have beef that you can get shipped to your house now, which we do, fully
Really?
integrated. Yeah, best beef I've ever had. No hormones, no antibiotics, fully, when I say fully integrated, they have been working on this herd for 27 years.
Oh, wow.
And
They
they
take good
have
care of
their,
the cows and raise them right and all that.
yes, they raise all of their own food. They've got their own pasture land, and then they do all the processing. They're on site as well. They've got their own packing house. So
I love that. You're speaking my language now. I'm all into that stuff. So we can jam on that for a while.
yeah, yeah. It's my jam too, right? And it it is actually because of that company that I am a financial coach today. So
Oh,
it's
really?
so interesting how, I believe it's so interesting how, when opportunities are presented, right, we see where we're really meant to go. And our debt-free journey really got started because of that company. They are a completely debt-free company as well, and they really promote debt-free living, and I appreciate that. And so, I was introduced to debt-free living through that company, and
Oh,
that's what
wow.
started my husband and I's journey.
That's so funny. That's interesting.
Yeah,
So you have
yeah.
that company, you have the coaching company, and
Mhm.
two more?
Yeah, two more. So we print, this is just an example, we print photos or digital artwork on metal. So this is metal.
Okay.
Um, so this is a custom design that my husband has. We've got our veterans line. But any digital artwork or photo, we can print it on metal. We
Oh, that's
also
cool.
do metal business cards. So this is mine. So two-sided, super fun metal business cards. Um, And that's like the creative business, right? Like that's the
Yeah.
one you talked about, people having multi dimensions. I always call myself a multi creative, right? Because I like the coaching, but there's a lot of emotions, and sometimes that can be kind of heavy helping people with their money. The toxin free living, that's a whole other area, right? Like that's kind of fun, but the printing is really the creative outlet. We get to do really fun creative things there. And then
So
my
you design
husband,
them?
we can design, yeah, we've got a whole veteran line that we have designed ourselves. Um, and then there's like this is a photo that somebody else took, and you'll see
Oh,
there's a
okay.
lot of glare because they're so shiny.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's
What's the idea of putting it on metal? That's really interesting.
number one, it's so different. Two, I think you get I think people have gotten away from the standard, like print it on photo paper and put it behind glass in a frame and hang it on your wall, right?
Yeah.
The metal is different. It's different than canvas. You don't get that shine and that gloss. You don't get that gallery quality, I don't think, on canvas. And so metal, it's super lightweight. So if you're living in a place that you don't want to put holes in the wall, so think, college kids, apartments that
Hmm.
you're renting, right? A home that you're renting. Um, RV living where you don't have solid walls to hang framed photos. These are so lightweight. They're UV protected, so the sun doesn't fade them. They're almost indestructible. I mean, they will bend if you bend them, but that's not super common. Um, and they don't take up a lot of room either, right? And so they're easy to switch out for seasons or what have you. And my husband wasn't really into it. We started out with t-shirts actually at first, and I was like, we really need to try metal prints. And he's like, Sarah, no, we don't. Now it's his favorite thing to do. He's like,
Oh,
get rid of the
really?
t-shirts. I don't want to do shirts anymore. Let's do the metal prints. So
Do you find it sells better or it's just more fun to do?
they're just more fun to do. And we've done quite a few t-shirts. They T-shirts,
Everyone
frankly, are a
does
little
t-shirts.
cumbersome. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. They can be a little cumbersome. You can people we're really into USA manufactured, and to get USA manufactured clothing and t-shirts, you're going to spend, a higher price for that.
Yeah.
And a lot of times people aren't interested in doing that. They're really looking for the $5 t-shirts, and that's not where we want to go. So all of our metal that we use is made and cut by USA manufacturers as well. So all the stuff that we use comes from the United States. That's really important for us. Um, and
That's
so
cool.
we want to support other USA businesses. And I think they're still catching on. The metal prints are still kind of catching on. They're kind of new out in the marketplace. So
Yeah, I haven't heard of that. I mean, I'm not
yeah.
in that world, I don't think. We do photography, but I've never heard of metal prints. That's really neat. I'm gonna look into that.
Hmm. A lot of high-end photographers, or you'll see a lot of metal prints in galleries, because that's kind
You
of the
just
new
you sell them on like
fad.
eBay or Marketplace?
Yeah, just mostly off of our Facebook and Instagram accounts.
Oh,
Right
wow.
now, we're working on getting a website set up for that. Because we're starting to grow, so now we want to get a website set up. And but yeah, we've just over a year now have had this business, and just selling it, yeah, Facebook and Instagram.
That's super neat. And then I think we're about to say your husband, maybe he does the last one.
Yes, he is with a company that does business lending, so kind of bridging that gap for businesses in their funding. Um, So he works with a lot of different types of businesses to help them kind of bridge that gap, especially, sometimes the economy's kind of rough, right?
Yeah.
And they need to upgrade their equipment, or maybe they need, some help to cover payroll while they're getting some of their, unpaid invoices in. So he works in business lending.
Yeah, lending is that can be a huge business form. Does he work
Mhm.
with Ryan Stewman, his whole lending arm, or is it something separate?
Nope, he is with Closer Kappa and Ryan Stewman.
Oh, yes.
Hmm.
Oh, cool. Okay. Yeah, I looked
Yeah,
into that for a while. I thought about going that way, but
yeah.
sounds like it's going well for him.
Yeah, he's it's a new avenue. I'm kind of the entrepreneur in the family, but you know, we know that we want to stay on the road, right? We want to continue living this lifestyle. And to do that, we really have to step out of our comfort zones and do things that are innovative and different, right? And we want the flexibility to be able to pick up and go or to explore whenever we want. And even working remotely for somebody else, sometimes you don't have that full
Yeah.
flexibility. So
Yeah. So for you, it's more about freedom and living
mhm.
autonomously, not being chained to a desk or a company or city or state.
It really is, and I think that, that's something that I really want people to define for themselves is what does that freedom look like, right? Because a lot of people say they want freedom, they want financial freedom, but what does that really look like? And for us, it doesn't necessarily mean making millions of dollars a year. For us, it means having the flexibility to change our neighbors if we don't like them, right? Change
Yeah.
our scenery. If we want to be on the beach for a while, we can, or if we want to be up in the mountains for a month, we can pick up and go. Um, it really is the freedom and the flexibility to live for today and still plan for tomorrow at the same time, right? I think we have this mindset that we can either do or we can do either or, but I want to show people that you really can do both at the same time. And for us, this is like the true testament that we don't know when life is going to end. We don't know when our last day is going to be here. And so we want to use this time to experience as much as we absolutely can.
Do you think, 'cause you talk a lot about mindset with
Mhm.
money? I mean, mindset's kind of the basis of everything, right? Do you think a lot of the mindset um, habits or beliefs that you've adopted in the last few years that's kind of made you who you are, is that kind of why you guys are pursuing this life of saying, look, we want to travel, we want to be mobile, we want to have complete financial freedom? Like, would the you of 5 or 10 years ago have made that choice?
Absolutely not. And we wouldn't have been in a position financially to be able to even if the opportunity was presented, we wouldn't have been in a financial position to be able to say yes to it. 5 years ago we would, but 10, absolutely not. Um, I've had to really work on myself with my money mindset because I grew up in this developed a really severe sense of scarcity
Mm,
mindset. Terrified to spend money, terrified money goes into a savings, it absolutely does not come out. That's the way, I conditioned myself.
yeah.
And so traveling, it that feels extravagant, right? Like there's needs that need to be met. Like we don't spend money on traveling. Um, and we also had to work on our communication between the two of us to get to this point that we felt comfortable coming into this lifestyle, knowing we were going to spend that much time together. So it's mindset and it's communication between couples, and it's getting our money in a position that we could say yes to this fairly easily, right? We didn't have to make a whole lot of adjustments to be able to take advantage of the opportunity to travel.
Yeah. What do you think it was that kind of put you in that scarcity mindset? Was it something like the environment you were raised in? And a lot of us are raised by parents or grandparents who went through the Great Depression, and that was true scarcity living. Like they had to be in
Mhm.
scarcity for what that was, right? Do you
Mhm.
think like that like shaped those beliefs for you, or was it truly you that imposed them on yourself?
I think it's a combination of both. I think that we take our experiences and those experiences kind of manifest differently for all of us. I definitely grew up in a household where we were told we were broke all the time, right? We
Mm.
didn't have for many years, we didn't have solid running vehicles. I actually used an outhouse for much of my life. I'm
Did you
only
really?
45 years old, and I used an outhouse quite a bit because our plumbing wasn't reliable. We didn't have a furnace. We had a wood burning stove in our house, right? And so that was our only form of heat. And Another reason why I don't like the cold is I've lived in a lot of cold. I want to be in a place where I'm warm. And so my dad worked a full-time job, but he also was a serial entrepreneur. And so I also grew up, so this is interesting too. I grew up thinking you had to keep creating new businesses to just make enough, quote unquote, enough,
Mm,
right? And there was never enough. So it's like start another business, make more money. We don't have enough to take vacation. We don't have enough to do. And so when I moved out, when I was 17. I had had a job since I was 14. I bought my own clothes since I was 14, kind of started taking care of myself, not completely financially, but a good portion of it at 14. And I moved out at 17 years old. And from there, it was just like, how do I survive? How do I, because I don't want to go back to living with my parents. I need to continue living on my own. So, what do I need to do to make that happen? And I worked two jobs for a long time, and um it just always felt like there wasn't enough, and I think I created more of that because I looked at other people and I was like, I wish I could be doing what they're doing, but I can't. Right? I wish I could do that, but oh, I don't have enough money. That wasn't
mm.
necessarily true, right? It's just a lot of the language that we use with ourselves, right? We start to ingrain that, we start to develop those beliefs, and so you put that on top of how I grew up, it started to kind of snowball, right? And then I ended up going through a divorce. So I was married at 20 years old, um, and I was divorced with two kids by the time I was 24. And so
Wow.
scarcity um, really kicked in then too, because it was just me taking care of my kids, and how the heck am I going to do this, right? And it took me a lot of years to move out of that scarcity mindset. A lot of
How
years.
did you move out of it?
A lot of it was putting systems in place, so it took away some of those fears for me, right? And so a common fear that I had was, um, what if the car breaks down? What if the kids get sick? What if, right? And we always attach a dollar amount to those what ifs, what if I need something on the house? And that's where it led into put money into the savings account to cover those what ifs. But those what ifs would come, and I got really creative to create more money to take care of those what ifs. I didn't want to pull that money out of the savings because that felt like a failure, right?
Mm,
And so part of this moving out of the scarcity was creating systems that took away some of those what ifs, or they covered it. Um, and marrying somebody that my husband and I are complete opposites. We are absolutely complete opposites. He's the spontaneous one and I'm the planner, right?
okay.
And so
Yeah.
marrying somebody that's spontaneous,
It's probably
I had
good
to
for you,
start.
wasn't it?
It was not good for a while. It turned out to be good, but we went through, a lot of years of, some marriage counseling and rough patch because of that, because we didn't know how to communicate with it. And so I don't want to make this answer so long-winded, but there's a lot of bits and pieces that went into it. And part of it was more effective communication with him. So he knew where I was coming from. So he could start to notice some of the triggers when scarcity was really taking over for me. Right.
Mm,
Because sometimes we don't notice that so much when we're in the deep of it. We don't notice it so much with ourselves. So having somebody to be able to kind of pull us out, or to say, hey, you need to take a step back. Let's look at this a different way. Very helpful. Um, Again, I mentioned the systems, putting systems in place that made me feel safe with my money, that I knew should something happen with a car, I've already planned ahead for that. So I don't have to worry so much about it. I don't have to be in scarcity. I can give myself permission to go out to eat. I can put money away to go and grab some books at the bookstore. Right. And so part of it also was really looking and saying, what, I'm actually kind of sick of living this way. Like I'm really sick of having so much anxiety around money that I don't think I need to do this anymore.
you had
And
enough.
so I had enough. Mhm.
Well, do you think it was like, was there one specific moment, or was this just like a culmination of all the years and it kind of happened over time?
I think really what started to change the bulk of all of this was it was really kind of the year 2016, 2017. Um, my husband and I were in a really, really rough place in marriage. Like we were ready to sign divorce papers, and be done with it. And I just got to a point where I was like, I don't know that I'm actually done with the marriage, but I was trying so hard to change both of us and change our situation that I really had to take a step back and say, listen, the only thing that you can change, Sarah, is you. And so here's where you need to start. And so I didn't necessarily put the marriage on the back burner, but I really had to turn my focus in on me and say, what are you doing that's truthfully no longer serving you? And I know it sounds so cliche, but I really did have this conversation and say, where do you need to make some adjustments? You can't change him. You can't change everything collectively, but you can change yourself. So where do you need to start? What's really going on here? And I had to get really clear on what I wanted, what I was needing. Um, where was I looking to him to fill those holes where I really needed to be looking at myself, for taking care of myself first? Where did I have resentments towards my children? And I hate to say that, but it's true.
It's
I
real.
really had
It's honest.
it. Yeah. And my son was getting ready to graduate high school in 2017. And so, there were resentments there. I wanted to do more things for him, but eh, it's like I just needed to look at me and how can I take care of me and how can I learn to be a better communicator and how can I be happy? I think that's really where it came down to is I just wanted joy in life and I didn't feel like I had a lot of it.
That's a big one.
Mhm.
So you guys were focused more, not necessarily on the finances, but you were focused more on the marriage, the issues, personally with each other. And it seems like that probably bled into other areas and improved other areas.
Mhm. Yeah, and we were on our second debt-free journey at that point, right? And I knew that I didn't want it to be like the first one, where we were only debt-free for 4 months, announce it and then 4 months later we're back in all kinds of debt.
Mm,
So I knew that I wanted this time to be different and that was part of it that when everything was kind of coming to a head and we were fighting and he was working, he was kind of burying himself in work, to avoid having conversations with me.
a lot of
And
guys do that.
yeah, it was his coping mechanism, right? Is just to be gone. Let me just so he was working, sometimes 120 hours a week, which was close to killing him,
Mm,
quite frankly, right? I mean, nobody needs to work that much.
yeah,
Um,
that's a lot.
it was a lot, and we were making more money than we had ever made before and still not in a better place, right? And so he said, "You make me feel poor. You make me feel poor with the way that you act and the way that you treat money." And it was again kind of all at the same time frame of like, okay, so if I'm making him feel poor, then how do I need to change the way I communicate about this, about money, so that we are working more together on this, that I'm not forcing him to do this, but he actually wants to participate. How can I change the way that I communicate that he receives it? He told me, he said, Sarah, it's confrontation. And I was like, no, it's communication. He said, no, it feels like confrontation every time you open your mouth. And he doesn't do confrontation. Right. And so every time I would go to speak, he was like instantly sealed up, closed up. I'm not answering, I'm not participating. And so it really was just kind of working on how we communicated. And then that did bleed over into, the marriage getting a little bit stronger, finances really becoming, stronger. And then individually, we became stronger too.
Wow, you guys went through a lot then. I mean, kudos to both of you because I mean, A, for him to even be able to call you out in a way that, you don't feel like you're being attacked necessarily, and for you to go introspective on that and say, okay, here's how he's receiving this. How can I change things up? Like that, that takes a level of consciousness and communication that most people I don't think are even self-aware enough to begin to do. Right.
Mhm.
So that's, I
Ag-
mean, good for you guys for doing that.
Oh, well, thank you. It didn't happen overnight. I mean, it was a process, and I wouldn't say that I accepted it right away. But I think when you are self-reflective enough that you really do get to a point where you're just not willing. I didn't want to go through another divorce. If I'm being real honest, I didn't want to go through another divorce. I didn't want to have to try and figure things out again. I truly was in love with him, but I didn't know how to make it work. And so it really was this level of like, I've tried everything else, so maybe I'm the problem,
Mm,
right? Maybe I'm the problem here. And that's not easy to admit.
no, no, it's not. But you took a lot of ownership at that point.
Mhm,
And when you take ownership of it, you can start to make changes. And
mhm.
then the other person can start to make changes as well.
And I think that we interacted differently. We started to really see each other differently at that point. And a lot of times people, what they told me, that's kind of selfish. I would tell them, I'm like, hey, I'm just focusing on me. And they would say, gosh, that's awfully selfish. And I was like, well, actually, it's not. I need to improve me so that I can be better with other people.
Yep.
And I didn't find it selfish. It really was the best thing that I could have done, was turn all of my focus on me. Kids, don't want to say they fended for themselves, but they were at an age that they still needed me. But again, I needed to focus on me so I could be a better parent to them.
Well, that's just it. And that's, I think, the one of the mistakes that most parents make is they make all of life about their kids because life's about your kids once you have kids, especially if they're little. But it's that analogy of you have to put on your own oxygen mask first before you can save their
Mhm,
life. To be the best for your kids, you have to be at 100%. You can't be at 50%. Your marriage can't
mhm,
survive that. You're not good for your kids. And the kids need that strong marriage for you guys. So you have to focus on yourself so you can be the best you can be for them and everybody else. And I think a lot of people don't get that.
mhm. Um, 100% agreed with that. And I don't want to say that it was more difficult for us because there's a lot of people that are in this situation, but the kids having two households, me being divorced from their dad, that throws in another level, right,
Yep.
of communication. And I think that, there was part of me that was kind of fighting with my ex to try and be the better parent, and I'm not proud to say that, but that's what was going on in my life at the time, that I held a lot of resentment there as well. And
Sure.
again, I don't want to go too deep, but there were some things happening with my own parents during that time. I became estranged with my mom, right? Several years earlier. We actually ended up going back into debt right at the time that my dad was killed in a motorcycle accident. And so
Mm,
there was a lot of stuff that happened in a short amount of time that just felt like it kept compounding. And I felt like it was continually putting out fires, but really it wasn't putting out any fires. It was actually like putting the accelerant on, right? It was actually just making everything else grow because I wasn't focusing on me.
so did you find when the marriage started to improve, is that when the finances started to improve as well?
Um, I think they definitely coincided. And I can't say that one came kind of first. I don't know that I would say it was because the marriage started to improve that the finances did, or if the finances kind of started to improve and the marriage did. I think they were very much intertwined because we started to communicate a little bit better. And because finances was an area that I felt like I had a little bit more control in,
Mm.
right? And so if I could communicate a little bit better about money, and if I could really maybe get us out of debt, or, grow the savings, if we could do the things that we, really wanted to do, if I could make that possible, then it takes a little bit of strain off, right? And so it felt like an area that I had more control in versus some of the other things that we were fighting about. And so again, I don't know that it was one in front of another, but
Yeah.
they were very much intertwined.
I want to ask you in a second about more tactics and strategy on how you did that. But going back to something you said a minute ago, your husband said, "You made me feel poor." You reflected on that. What changes did you make? You said, "Okay, this is how he's taking this. Here's what I need to do to communicate differently and better." So, what changes did you make on the back of hearing that?
Hmm. So, in that, when he said I made him feel poor, he said, Sarah, you always seem to find the money to do the things that you want to do. But when it's the things that I want to do, we don't have enough. And I
Ouch.
was like, but you're not helping me here, right? You're not creating the I called it a budget at that time. I call it a money plan now, but I'm like, you're not involved. I don't know what it is that you want. So yeah, I'm going to find the things, of course I'm going to find the money to do the things that I want because I'm the one that's handling this. And so after having those conversations, then I started asking like, what is it that you want? Like, what do you feel that you really want in life that you don't actually have right now? What is it that you want that you
That's a
feel like
good
you don't
question.
have? And I think a lot of times it's easy kind of to focus on the toys, buying, a new truck or a boat or four-wheeler, whatever it is. But really, he said he just wants to feel like his hard work is appreciated and that something big for him was travel. He said, I just want to feel like if we want to take a weekend away, that we can do it without it being a big production. Again,
Mm,
here's where the spontaneity comes in versus the planner. You're not going to come to me on a Friday morning and say, hey, we're going away this weekend because I haven't planned that out. Right. And so because I started asking those questions, then I could change the way that we handled money to accommodate that. So we created an actual fund that we called this spontaneity fund, right? And so this cash envelope, we put money in every paycheck. So when he wanted to do something spontaneous, we had the cash already there. So it wasn't like this end of the world happening. How are we going to come up with the money to pay for it? Right. And so
yeah,
when I started doing that, I started asking those questions differently. I started really listening to what he wanted. Doesn't mean I agreed with it, but I really started listening to what he wanted and what he valued. And I thought, okay, now how can I make this work? How can I implement this? So he is seeing that his hard work and all of these hours that he's putting in, he feels like it's really paying off financially, right? He wants to go and have a couple of beers with the guys without me throwing a big fit about it, right? And so we then started implementing free money. You get free money, I get free money. We can do with it as we choose. I don't have to tell you what I'm doing with it. You don't have to tell me what you're doing with it, right? It's just, and that changed the game for us. It really did.
really.
Um, it eye-opening how just a few of these small changes literally changed everything.
Just from asking the right question, essentially.
Yeah.
You asked one really solid question that got to the center
Hmm.
of things, figure out what you wanted to feel like, most importantly. And
Hmm.
that changed the game for you.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. And listening to what he said, 'cause sometimes we're really good about asking, but we're not really good about listening. So I really had to listen to what he said. And then there were some follow-up questions, right? Like, what does
Sure.
that actually look like? And then I said, after I put some, ideas down, I took it back to him. I said, okay, here's what I think we can do. Are you okay with this? Does this feel right to you? Do you want more? Do you want less? Are you okay with this? And he just liked to be included in those types of conversations because it was really asking him what it is that he wanted, what he valued, what made him feel appreciated.
Did you get training in communication, or did this come from the marriage counselor, or did this just come from you?
It just came from me. No training. And actually there's a funny story about the marriage counselor, which I won't say, but I will just say shortly that leaving marriage counseling and quitting because we actually started communicating better because neither one of us liked the marriage counselor. We couldn't stand
You found
going to
common
talk
ground
with
on
it.
that.
We did, and we started communicating a little bit better after we said we're not seeing that guy any longer.
That's
So
funny. At least there was a silver lining in that, right?
right, right. But no, the communication just came from me of, really looking at what I was doing, what was working and what wasn't working, and what can I do to make things different.
That's awesome. I love to hear that.
Mhm.
Getting to the tactics and strategies for a minute now. This will be the
Mhm.
fun part, the more
Yeah.
fun part. All right, your ideal client. Let's say I want to coach with you, right? What does your ideal client look like? Are they at rock bottom? Are they comfortable and want to scale? What does that person look like?
hmm My ideal client are people that know they make good money, but they just don't feel like they've got really anything to show for it. They feel like they're constantly trying to put money into their savings, but then it comes right back out again. They are not on the same page with their partner. They're not in marriage crisis, but they're not on the same page and they don't really know how to be on the same page with their partner. Um, my ideal clients are people that have other disciplines in life. So they're clear on what discipline looks like. So a lot of my clients are small business owners because to be a
Mm,
small business owner, you really do have to, have that discipline.
yeah,
People that work out a lot or are really intentional with their eating and their fitness. I work a lot with those people because they've got those disciplines, already built. There are some resources that I can provide to people that are in like crisis mode or, really do not have enough money to survive, but those are not the people that I work one on one with.
yeah, yeah. Those are inappropriate. Here's some free resources. What do you suggest for those people that are at rock bottom? No savings, paycheck to paycheck. They just don't know how to help themselves. What are some things that you recommend for those people?
hmm I think one of the best skills that any of us can develop is learning how to create more money. And this could be asking for a raise at work. This can be looking for another job opportunity. This can be, a side hustle. I think that there are people that if you spend any time on social media, you will see people making money off of some of the, dare I say, the craziest things,
Yeah.
but it's because they're creative and they're giving themselves an opportunity. Um, to do something different, right? And so I think the best skill anybody can learn is to learn how to create more money. um and that's a big one.
Yeah. I like that you said that because I thought you were going to say cutting spending. That's where most people start. And I know a little bit about you that you're not about living in scarcity. You're not about, cutting it ridiculously like that. So I
Mhm.
like to hear you say increase your income first. It's easier to make more money than it is just to save more money.
It is, and it goes back into the mindset in, when we're talking about money. I believe that if we want to change our financial situation, we have four options, right? One is to cut spending, two is to increase our income, three is to do both, which dare I say is the best option, and four really is to do nothing, which a lot of people choose to do, and that's fine as well. So we have four options, right? I'm always going to suggest increase your income first because it does not matter what president we have. It does not matter what the economy looks like. It does not matter where you live. If you can get really good at creating more income, then you are going to survive.
Yep.
And if you're not good at creating more income, then life is going to be really, really hard.
Yeah, that's such a good point. It's like, yes, I'm all about being informed, voting, and all of that. But after the vote's done and real life, gets back to the way it is, it doesn't matter who's in office. They don't control your life as much as you do. Of course, the economy ebbs and flows, but like none of that really matters. What can you do?
Mhm.
So
Absolutely.
I can already hear a lot of people may say, I don't know where to start. I don't know what I should do. There's kind of this victim mentality of like feeling sorry for themselves. Where do
Mhm.
you suggest people look to find what should my side hustle be?
Mhm. Um, and this can be, it's going to vary for everyone. One, I would say, what are your strengths? What are you good at doing? For a lot of years, even now, I made all kinds of money last winter simply making sourdough bread out of my RV oven,
Oh, really?
right? Like I was new to sourdough and I live in an RV. The ovens are like tiny, but I made all kinds of extra money last winter just making sourdough bread for people.
Oh,
So
wow.
look at your strength, right? Where are you gifted in an area? The second thing is sometimes you just need to get out there and do something that's a little bit weird, and there are people here in Arizona, there's a lot of people. Actually, I followed one business for a while. The guy literally goes into HOA communities. He created this business, goes into HOA communities and says, "Hey, I will go and pull everybody's trash cans from the side out to the street and then take them back after trash is picked up," because that's an HOA requirement for a lot of communities, right?
Yep.
So literally all he's doing is pulling trash cans out and putting them back to help have residents be in compliance with their HOA. And he's created an amazing business, has multiple employees now doing this. I believe there's no excuse. Like there's collect cans off the highway. I mean, you can recycle aluminum cans and make some extra money if you're having a hard time putting food on your table,
Yeah.
right? Like there's so many things that we can do. Um, I think the biggest thing is just to start. Are you going to make a lot of money right away? Some people might get lucky. The majority of us really need to work at it and develop it, but it'll happen. You just have to have belief in yourself, right? You have to know why it is that you're doing it.
Yeah, I've heard of that trash can business model. I think that's pretty interesting. Very simple. Anybody can do it. And what I tell folks is like, look, I know this is true for me. When I first got into side hustling, you're going to be wrong probably a lot of the time. Like I had to do a lot of different things to find out what I didn't like to do or what wouldn't work for me to find what I do want to do, what does work for me. And you just have to do a lot of different stuff to find out what that is for you.
Hmm.
Every business model works. You can make great money doing literally anything for the most part, right? It helps
Hmm.
if you're really good at it. It helps if you're a little obsessed about the thing too.
I think it can. And, you know, for many years, I made cakes out of my house. Was I particularly good? No, but they tasted good, right? So I wasn't great at the decorating, but the flavors were really good. And so I made cakes and cupcakes for a lot of years, made cookies. I've tried a lot of things that didn't necessarily work because I didn't know, business at the time. But there was a period of time where I worked at least six different businesses and jobs, and that was really hard. But I needed to do it to get to a spot that was better that then I didn't need to do it
Mm,
anymore.
yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
So it doesn't mean that you have to do it forever. You just have to know what it is that you need to do to get to that next level, right? So what do I need to do right now to get to that next level? And then, things shift. Maybe you need the side hustle, maybe it turns into a full-time business. Who knows, right? Maybe um you've developed different disciplines and different skills so a new side hustle comes about. Like we come into new seasons of life all the time, right?
Oh
And so
yeah.
just because you need to do something now doesn't mean you stick with it forever. Um, it just means you know what it is that you're working towards, and once you get there, then you readjust, you reevaluate.
So once they have, a stable table, they're making good money, but they don't feel like they are. They kind of feel like a loss of control of their finances. That's when they should maybe come see you. And then
Hmm.
what will you do for them with working with them?
Yeah, so I work on kind of two main areas, and that is money mindset. And with that comes communication if they are in, a committed relationship, married. I work with a lot of single people too. The mindset is a big player. And then we also put in strategy. I am a big believer in one of the steps, and I'm just going to give it out there to anybody. One of the steps that everybody seems to miss is that you have to know what you want life to look like. If you don't know what it is that you're trying to create, then nothing you do is going to feel satisfying. Nothing you do is really going to quote unquote work because you don't know why it is that you're doing it. So if you're not giving yourself an opportunity to dream about life,
Mm,
then numbers can look pretty, right? We can make numbers, manipulate them to look pretty all we want. But if you don't know what it is that you want to create in life, then you're doing the rest for nothing. So that's what we do is we really, I call it creating your life, the roadmap to your created life. And so we absolutely work a lot on mindset. And then we put the strategy in place so people are reaching their financial goals quicker than they've ever reached them before. So they are seeing more freedoms, whatever that might mean to them. So they are feeling more flexible. They are feeling like their hard work is absolutely paying off, right? So they can see that they have something to pass along to their kids when they didn't beforehand.
Yeah. Well, without that clear roadmap too, you don't know where you're going. And
Hmm.
it's a good chance you're not going to get there if you don't know
Right.
where you want to go in the first place.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Do you invest like in real estate or anything like that, or any opinions towards investing side?
I think I have to be real careful because I am not licensed to give any kind of investing advice. But what my husband and I do is we do have some standard retirement plans. We've got some brokerage accounts that we manage with target indexed funds.
Yep.
Um, I am looking into CEFs now that I've just been introduced to CEFs, and so that's interesting. And we kind of have our first real estate mini investment. We actually are helping our son get his first home
Oh,
purchased.
cool.
He
That's exciting.
closes next week, and so we've invested a little bit in there. Um, this is an area that I've done a lot of work on because investing was always terrifying to me, again, because it feels like I don't have control. And so this has been the area that I've been most working on the past couple of years is increasing my knowledge of investing and what does it look like and what there's so many ways to invest, right? And so my eyes have been opened up. So are we in one particular area? Not necessarily. We're in kind of lots of different areas
Yeah.
with investing.
Well, I mean, the biggest investment you can make is in yourself, right? And if you invest in
Mhm.
yourself, you could double the income of your business and then have something real big to invest with, down the road.
And I'm always going to bet on myself first, right? Like I'm really into that mindset now of it that I'm going to put my intention into me and us and again what it is that we're creating. But also knowing that I don't necessarily want to have to work forever, right?
Right.
That we are still in a position of having to work. I want to get to a place of working because I want to. And to do that, that requires investment in other areas. And so that's where our main focus is now is how are we growing our money to allow us to work when we want, not because we have to.
That's the key right there. Well,
Mhm.
I only have one question left for you, and I'd love for you to talk about some of the biggest testimonials or case studies from the
Mhm.
clients that you've worked with. Have you saved any marriages? I'm sure you have if you're teaching communication.
Yeah, one story that I love to share is I worked with a couple for about 13 months. They had 4 kids under the age of 5.
Whew.
Um, and when we met, they were regularly overdrafting their checking account $1,200, $1,500 a month.
Wow.
Um, by the time the 13 months was done, Ryan, they had paid off over $130,000 worth of debt. They had
Oh,
their peace of
wow.
mind fund. I call it a peace of mind fund. I do not call it an emergency fund. That's a topic for another day, but please stop calling it an emergency fund. Um, but they had their peace of mind fund built. And then not long after we stopped working together, they had gone on to purchase a couple new vehicles, new to them vehicles in cash, added onto their property. Their entire lives absolutely changed.
Oh, wow.
Um,
That's
I
incredible.
love sharing that because it really is a true testament to what dedication and what some short-term sacrifice can really do for you long term. Um, another story that I also love to share is I work with a lot of single women that don't feel worthy of making more money and feel like there's kind of this image that they have to portray, right? So they get respect. And a lot of times women we carry around a lot of shame and a lot of guilt when it comes to money and I helped in particular one woman get all of her debt paid off, build a business, um, and make that business profitable but also release a lot of the shame and the guilt and this image that she felt that she had to put out to others, that she turned it inward and really, she said, "This is the first time that I feel like I don't have to prove myself to somebody else." And, oh, hearing that, it's the best, right? Because again, numbers are great, but this is for a lifetime. These are skills that people are learning that are going to carry them a lifetime. And if when we released a lot of that shame and guilt and that image that she felt like she had to portray and put out there, to release that, the freeing and the weights that come off, it's beautiful.
I can imagine. I wonder why that is the case when people, you say women especially have, have those beliefs. It's a curious thing.
Hmm. I mean, I could talk all day long on, the differences between men and women and money and some of the beliefs that we have. It is another favorite topic of mine to talk about, but I think it's important, and that's what I help a lot of the couples that I work with help them to understand is that m- we as women feel very differently about money than men do. Right?
Mm.
And because of that, we need different things financially, and it's important to know that. I think men also carry a lot of guilt with money, but they don't necessarily carry a lot of the shame. Women carry a lot of shame with money. There's a lot of guilt that comes with money, especially parents. Um,
Oh yeah.
Women tend to hit the restriction mode a little bit faster than men do. Men are not so easy, to hit restriction. Generally, men are the ones that like, hey, I need to increase income or I'm going to, get a side hustle. Women, we tend to fall back and say, okay, I'm not getting my hair done. I'm not getting any new clothes. I'm not buying. I had a I had a client, actually that same client said, and I'm not mentioning her name, but she wouldn't buy a new bra for years, right? It wore the same one for years. And I'm like, this is a foundational, like, this is not a
You
want.
can
This is
you can get
something
a new
that,
bra. It's fine.
right? But she felt guilty for doing that because there are other things that were more important, right? And so,
Wow.
um, and so understanding that about ourselves and understanding that about our partners, it opens up. Men, again, just like my husband, he needed to feel like his hard work was really appreciated and that he could do those fun things because, and I'm not saying that women don't work as hard. I'm not going there. I'm saying that men, generally speaking,
It's a
they
different need.
they it is a different need, and they want, it's like that appreciation, and it's like their payback, right? They're like, "Hey, I'm working all these hours. I want to be able to go and do some of these things because that's what makes me feel good. It makes me feel like, okay, I'm doing what I need to do." They also, if bills are not getting paid, they internalize that and feel like, "Hey, I'm a failure." Right? I'm not providing for my family. A
Sure.
lot of times that manifests as some anger and again, um uh burying themselves in work or creating, extra income. Women, we like money in the bank. We like savings because that feels like security, that feels safety, right? It really is covering, like, even with some processes, and strategy in place, we want to know that the kids are going to be taken care of should they get sick, right?
Right.
And so having money in the bank for us feels like that safety and that security. And so that's why it's, I don't want to say easier, but we are generally the ones to hit that restriction mode. So the more money I can put into the bank, I'm going to do it, right?
Yeah.
I'm going to cut out the things that I want so I can put more money in the bank so I can protect my family. Um, so
Wow.
understanding that makes a big difference.
Oh, for sure. Maybe we'll have you back and do a two-parter then to go on down that rabbit hole.
Yeah, I know. Sorry, I can talk about this stuff. And I think it's just stuff that we don't know that can open our eyes in ways that allows us to see our partners differently and see ourselves differently, right? And oftentimes that's what we need. It's not the numbers per se. It's really like, let me help you to see your partner differently and let me help you to see yourself differently. And that's where things start to really change for you. So
Well,
um
that's the key
yeah.
to everything with a marriage is what you just said. And in fact, people always say, marriage is hard. I actually don't think it is. I just think people don't know how to do it. People don't know how to talk to each other. They don't know how to,
Mhm.
be self-aware. It sure takes hard work, okay, but I don't think it's that complicated once you know how to do the right things. And once you're asking the
Mhm.
right questions and you're, making the changes necessary, as you and your husband have.
I agree with that 100%. They say marriages fail because of finances, and I disagree with that. I say marriages fail because we don't know how to communicate about finances, right?
It's
And
yeah,
other things. If we're not communicating about finances, then, we're not communicating about other things effectively either, right? It's not
it's
just one area.
it all goes back to communication. I'm trying to teach that to my daughter now. She's 8. My boys are 2 and 3.
Mm,
I'm drilling her every day about communicating effectively. And luckily my wife, sees it. She hears me talking about it and she's totally on board with that idea as well.
mhm,
So it's really the basis of everything is how you communicate. And a lot of men just aren't good communicators just by nature.
mhm.
So it's been a struggle.
Yeah. Well, and the good news is, and I'll speak from experience, that I wasn't a great communicator for a long time. And now that my kids are in their early 20s, because I'm more effective now, I can then teach them now. It doesn't mean that you can't ever change the course of, your future. It doesn't mean that you can't change some things that have been, we can't necessarily change the past, but I think we can change how it's perceived and how we hold on to it in the future, right? And so I communicate very differently with my kids now that they're in their 20s because I am more effective with it. I understand them differently, right? And it's because I understand myself differently that I can see things with them. And we've got a closer relationship now than I think we ever have. And
Mm,
it's it's a beautiful, beautiful thing.
I love that. That's great to
Mhm,
hear. Well, Sarah, you've been very gracious with your time, answering all
mhm.
my questions. I appreciate that. Uh, Anything else you feel like we haven't touched on yet that you'd like to leave this with?
Oh gosh. I mean, we talked about so many things, and again, I can talk for days on all of this, but one thing I just want to share is that um your mindset, Ryan, you brought this up. Mindset does play a big part in a lot of what we do, but if you believe it's too late for you to change, then it really is. It's really changing the way that you look at it and say, what can I do today that might make just the itty bitty littlest change for tomorrow, right? What
Mm,
can I do today that, even if I think it's too late, what's one little tiny adjustment that I can make today that I might say, I'm really glad I did that tomorrow, right? And I think sometimes people look for these big grand things to do, but it's the little consistent activities that you do over and over and over that really do make the biggest impact long term. And so I would just say, if you want to start in one place, one thing I will always tell people to do is go back through the past month or 2 months and just get an average of where all of your money actually is going. Not just think about it, not just where you think it went, but really go through the numbers and start there. Get a clear idea of where you're spending all of your dollars, and that opens up a whole world of choices and opportunities going forward. So
do you hear that a lot that people say it's too late for me or anything like that?
all the time,
Oh,
absolutely all the time.
that's such a bad thing to say to yourself. You got to get out of that mindset. It's never too late.
It's never too late. And people, my age, I've heard people younger, say it. And I mean, if you're 70 years old and you want to retire with $2 million and you're on Social Security, is that going to happen? I don't know. I mean, it would take a lot of work. You could probably make it. It would take a lot of work, but it's never too late to start making some adjustments. It's never too
Yeah.
late to start trying, increasing that income. It's never too late to, just take a look at where your money really is going, and are you spending it in ways that bring value to your life? Like it's never too late to make an adjustment on your habits.
Yeah, you can always improve no matter what. I mean, most people who are saying that I'm imagining are probably in their 30s and 40s who
Mhm.
have half their life left, more than half their life. If even if you're 50 or 60, you live till 80 or 90 these days. I mean, come on, you got a lot of life left to live.
Mhm. And I think it's because people are, number one, they feel very buried. It feels like they've tried things and they've tried and they've tried and nothing really has worked the way that they wanted it to work. And so it just feels like these, like you're underwater and your nose is just barely out, right? That you might get a lull, the tide might go down a little bit, you get your head out and then something else comes and you're back to the same position. And I think year after year that weighs on people a lot. And so it does feel like it's too late because they've tried all of these things, but I think it really comes down to that there's a way in which that we do these that makes the difference. And I say so many times people are just focused on the numbers, and that's where I will tell you it's not just the numbers. We can make numbers look really pretty, but that doesn't mean that it's realistic for your life. And people get frustrated because that's where they focus on is the numbers, because that's where we can
Mm,
control more, right?
yeah.
And so when we do a combination of the mindset and the numbers, that's where things really start to where people really start to see a difference. And I've said it, that's what made a difference in my life, right? Is really looking at the mindset and then how do these numbers play a part in that? Where can I start to manipulate these numbers that leads me where I most want to go? And when we can do a combination of both of those, which most of us can't do it on our own. And I didn't do it all on my own. I mean, after a while, I started like, oh, there's financial coaches. I had no idea this was a thing. Right. And
Mm,
so I started working with coaches that helped me then to start working on my mindset. Once we start, you know, uh, have these tools in front of us, then we can start to implement them, right? But
yeah.
I have the compassion for people that say those things because they truly don't see a different way through it.
And what you're talking about is the feeling of hopelessness. And the feeling of hopelessness has to be avoided at all costs. Like
Mhm,
you're not going to get anywhere feeling like it's hopeless. The despair
mhm,
is just not a useful emotion. You may be perfectly justified to feel that. You might be right to feel that, but it's not going to serve you.
mhm. Yeah, and I'm not always the positive, and actually I was called Eeyore for many years, right?
Oh,
The
really?
the
I could not
the
see that
popular
now.
pessimist.
That's
Eh,
funny.
but I do the way that you see life really does play a part in what's going on in your life. And I don't know who said it first, but I'll just say there's been so many people, the message that I keep hearing from so many quote unquote influencers lately is taking radical responsibility for what's going on in your life. And while I I think when we do that, when we start to look at not necessarily the positive, but what have I learned or what can I learn from this situation, we become a little bit less pessimistic, right? We become a little bit less negative. We start to see things in a different light, and then we start to add in gratitude practices, right? And there's so much that starts to change, and that's all mindset and within ourselves, that then the outside world starts to kind of change right along with us.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah, it does. The filter I always put everything through is like, you know, is this going to serve you?
mhm,
You might you might have, all the reasons in the world to feel the way you do to keep you down, and you might be right. It's not helping you. And so change it.
right,
Like
right.
once you find a belief is not serving you, you have to change it. There's no other option.
Mhm. Absolutely, and just taking the time to identify that, that's kind of step number 1, right? Is just identifying, even if you don't know what to do differently, identifying what you no longer want to do anymore. That's a
Yeah.
great place to start.
And if you don't know, reach out to a coach such as yourself.
Mhm.
That's why people like you exist and have businesses.
Right. Well, selfish plug, please.
I've really enjoyed our conversation. I will definitely want to do a part two with you sometime, but this has been really fun for me. So thank you so much for coming on.
Well, thank you so much, Ryan. I enjoyed it as well.